Hi, everyone, and welcome to this quarter's Pipe17 office hours. I am Christina Dudley, VP of Marketing at Pipe17, and we're really glad that you could join us today. If this is your first time attending, welcome. Office hours are hands-on, customer-driven sessions where we focus on real operational challenges and walk through how Pipe17 helps you solve them in practice. This is an open, interactive session, so please feel free to drop questions into the Q&A at any point. We have some product experts live and behind the scenes ready to help. So today's topic is advanced order routing, and this is one that we hear about constantly from operators like yourselves. As fulfillment networks grow more complex, routing decisions get harder, split shipments and consistent packaging rules and rising fulfillment and packaging costs quietly erode margins and negatively impact the customer experience. Many teams end up relying on brittle logic, workarounds, or even manual intervention just to keep orders flowing. And that's exactly why we've introduced Pipe17's advanced order routing features, designed to give you more control over how orders are fulfilled without adding operational overhead. So today we're going to cover ship and own container, all or nothing shipping, single location shipping, and location groups. These features, amongst the many we have, help you automate complex decisions, reduce unnecessary splits and costs, and strike the right balance between efficiency and customer satisfaction. So to walk us through this, I am joined by Dan Fowler, Technical Product Manager, along with a few of our Pipe17 product experts who will help you answer the questions live. Quick housekeeping before we begin. To ask a question, head to the Events tab, select the Q&A sub-tab, and then click the green Ask a Question button. We'll answer questions as we go, whenever possible, and we'll also reserve time at the end. We have reserved time at the end to open it up for Q&A. So with that, let's dive in. Dan, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be walking through some advanced routing features, and we're going to be starting with shipping options. Before I go ahead and share my screen, I just kind of want to lay a foundation of what shipping options are. So shipping options work alongside with our order routing engine. The routing engine essentially determines where and if it can be routed, but shipping options provide sort of the how the shipping request should be created. And I think we're seeing my screen now, which I will be jumping into shortly. And we'll go over some specific examples about those shipping options that we currently have and what we can currently cover here. It should be noted that shipping options are actually associated to the order line item. So it's not directly related to the shipping request. It only sort of infers how it should be created. But the actual shipping options themselves are going to be associated on the order level. So now I believe we're seeing my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about some of the specific shipping option examples. The first option we have on my screen here, you should see 3 items associated with this order. And this example is going to be ship and own container. So in this specific shipping option, the option applied actually splits and creates individual shipping requests, not only by the line item, but also by the quantity associated with that line item. So that's an important distinction because if you have, for instance, in this example, I have 1 fishing pole, you can see on my screen here, but if I had 2 fishing poles and I had the ship and own container set on that line item, what would actually happen is I would have 2 shipping requests associated with that, not just one with a quantity of 2. So that's an important distinction for the ship and own container. Here, though, this example is we have 1 fishing pole and we have 2 fishing lures. You might be wondering why I chose fishing, because that's what I have in my test account. So looking at this example, this order has imported, we have a fishing pole, which is generally a very long, skinny item. It might not make sense to try to package any individual smaller items, such as a lure, with that fishing rod. So maybe my shipping strategy here is, okay, I know that I want this shipping rod in its own container. I don't want to try to mix this package. So if we go and actually take a closer look at the JSON data of this order, we can actually see how this looks from a data standpoint. So going down and scrolling through, What we see here are our line items. This is where the shipping options are actually associated with individual SKUs, individual products. In this instance, you can see we have a custom field set that says ship and own container. That's the acronym for ship and own container. And then you can see here, we have a corresponding shipping option where it is set to ship and own container. And this is really what the order routing engine is going to reference as it's processing this order, as it's creating that shipping request. So from a data perspective, we can see that this is set only on the actual fishing rod here. It's not set on the corresponding lures that are included within this order. So if we wanted to go and get a visual representation of how that would look in terms of the shipping requests created, what we could do is we'll go over and we'll take a look at how the shipping requests were created. You can see in this instance, instead of having one shipping request with 3 items, we actually have 2 shipping requests as per expected because the ship it in own container for the fishing rod. And you can see that represented here where this fishing rod is in its own container, its own shipping request. That represents to whatever fulfillment location that this needs to be packaged in its own container, its own box. And then you can see the second shipping request associated with this order. It's okay to go ahead and package these 2 lures together. That makes more sense from a logistics standpoint. So both of these items are encompassed in one shipping request. Going back to the fishing rod example, again, if we had multiple quantities here, you would actually see multiple shipping requests to represent those individual quantities. I think some of the questions might arise here. Well, when would you want to use this advanced routing option or this shipping option here? There's a couple of different distinct use cases. The obvious one is the one I've presented here, where you have a product with very large dimensions and it simply doesn't make sense to try to include it with packaging other items. So something like a table, a fishing rod. Dimensionally, it's just a very large item. It doesn't make sense. But another very distinct use case here could be something like hazmat. So you need to separate this item because it cannot ship with other items, something like lithium batteries, something along those lines. You could tell order routing when it's creating the shipping request, make sure that you split off this specific item in its own container so that we're meeting the shipping requirements associated with that. So this is the very first shipping option that we're representing, which is in ship and own container. And I'm going to move to our second option, and actually second and third option, because it's going to be represented within the same order. So I'm going to share and move to the second order. So in this order, you can see the very same fishing pole, but you can also see that we have a reel associated with this order. The idea and the shipping option associated with this order example is actually going to be twofold. It's going to be all or nothing shipping, as we're calling it, or single location shipping. It is noted that we can actually have multiple shipping options per line. It's not a single shipping option. So in this case, we can actually go ahead and look at the data of this order, and you'll see that there's 2 shipping options associated with these individual items. So if you look here, we can see that we have single location shipping and we have all or nothing shipping. So talking through these 2 distinct examples, single location shipping is essentially saying, I only want to create the shipping request when I have both or all of the items associated with the shipping option available. If these aren't available, then then the order routing engine isn't going to create that shipping request. The idea is we want to make sure that both or all of the products with the shipping option are available before we'll create the shipping request. If they're not, we'll actually put the order's routing status into pending inventory. But if they are both available, they'll get created on the same shipping request as to facilitate the same all or nothing, basically, if we can't include it in one package. And this is also a secondary option here that we have set, which is called single location shipping. This often gets grouped with all or nothing shipping, and in which case, not only do all of the items associated with that shipping option need to be available before the shipping request will be created, but they also have to ship from the same location. So they would basically be forced to route from the same location. So looking at these two examples, you can see that both, not only the fishing rod in this example, but also the reel in this example have both of the shipping options associated with them. And you can see that here. I hope that's coming through okay on my screen. So let's go ahead and take a look at the shipping request outcome for when that is created. So if we have both single location and all or nothing shipping applied, the outcome will be one shipping request, and both of the items are going to be within those shipping requests. Now, it could be noted that in this distinct case, as you saw from the previous example, the fishing pole being a sort of large dimensional item, it could still have that ship and own container. So you can have a lot of enumerations and different combinations with those different shipping options to really facilitate any flexible needs you have for how we're actually creating the shipping requests and then how they're being routed to the fulfillment location. So in this case, you can see one shipping request and both items are on it. And then you can see the total quantity. In this case, I want to force it from the same fulfillment location. I really don't want to pay the additional postage costs that it would require to send from two different locations. So my preference here is I want to force these two items to go together. But also from a customer experience perspective, you can't use a fishing rod without a reel. And conversely, you can't use a reel without a fishing rod. So I want these two things to arrive together when they're actually delivered to my customer, so that there's no weird in-between time where these items are not usable. So from that customer experience perspective, that might be a use case where I really want to drive the same shipping time and the same path forward so that there's no weird middle state. Really drive forward a good customer experience for people. So now that we kind of have a very baseline understanding of what the shipping options are, let's actually talk about how they're assigned. So as we've covered, they're associated on the order level with the line items of the order, but how are those options set? So we could go in, and if we really, really wanted to, we could go in and we could actually edit the data and just assign the shipping option manually, but that obviously sort of defeats the purpose here. So the way that we assign these shipping options is going to be through an automation rule. And I'm going to go ahead and open up an automation rule and show you what that might look like. Give me 1 second. Okay, so here we have the first automation rule. Let me back up. So this is the automation rule that is setting ship and own container. In this instance, the distinct use case here is I have an automation and I'm assigning that automation based on a product attribute. So we actually have the ability to store these options associated with the specific product. So in my use case, every time I see an order come in for my fishing rod, I don't need to worry about dealing with tags or anything referencing the order. While that is dynamic and I could do that, I know that this is a static value on the product, and it's very easy for me to reference that this product always needs to ship in its own container. And it would be the same use case if it was a hazmat item. You know that it needs to ship in its own container, so you could actually store that information on the product level and use that to drive your automation. So if we take a closer look at this automation, you can see the description. And in this instance, I'm actually using a code filter to identify if there are any products coming in on new orders that need to ship in their own container. So here I'm referencing the line items. I'm looking to see if the options on the products here are actually set with the ship and own container option on the product level. If I do see that, in the instance of the fishing rod, if I see a new order come in, it's going to have that ship and own container association. And then what we're going to do now is if we scroll down, we now have the actual aspect of assigning it to the order and the line item level for the fishing rod. You can see this is a fairly complex way to do this. It is very dynamic and flexible, but it is via what we call a code action with our automation rules. So in this case, the actual outcome you can see is very similar to what is shown in the order data, which is just a ship and own container in the shipping options, which will be honored whenever the order routing engine routes that order. So this is one way that you can really drive those shipping options forward without having to do anything manually. And in fact, if you do a little bit of prep work and set it on the product level, it's very easy just to simply reference that dynamically across your product catalog. So if you manage your product accordingly, it'll automatically get picked up with the required shipping options. This is a very straightforward one shipping option rule, but you have a lot of flexibility to combine things into one rule. So now that we've actually looked at this, let's cancel out of the code action and code filter option for assigning shipping options. And there is a second option, which is a bit more straightforward. In this instance, we actually are using a preset action to assign the shipping option. So you don't have to power this with your own code action. You can simply go in and assign it from a preset action. So let's go in and look at the all or nothing rule. And we'll go ahead and edit the rule because it'll be easier for everybody to see. But we come in here, you can see that we're not really doing anything complex from a filter perspective. But what we can do here is we can actually drive this from something along these lines. So you don't have to use the specific option associated with a product. If you have any custom fields coming in from your sales channel, or if you have any tagging in place, that can drive that as well. So that's why I was referencing earlier. Not only is it dynamic from product, but it also can use anything associated on the order as well. So looking at this, we are looking at custom fields. So any order that comes in, any order line items that come in, and they have this all or nothing custom field, and that is set to true. If I see that, very simply, then I'm going to assign the shipping option in the preset option. So in this instance, what we would do here is we're updating line items. So we're setting the property as line items, we're updating the items, and then we're setting what we're updating. In this instance, we're setting a shipping option, and we're going to add items. So we're going to add a shipping option to these line items. And in this instance, since as we looked at the previous order, I like to group all or nothing in single location, I'm actually setting both of those options for these products in one automation rule. You could be more granular where you're setting one or more options. It doesn't have to be together, but this is just fitting with how I like to ship my items. So you can see here, very simply, I'm just selecting these two preset shipping options. If we wanted to do any additional items here or any additional shipping options at the line level, you could do that. So if I had a really complex multi-pronged sort of rule setup, I could also add ship and own container and a few packing instructions as well. But in this instance, it's much more user-friendly, not nearly as complex. It's not as powerful as the code action and the code filter, but it is a bit more intuitive and easy to manage. So these are the main ways that we can associate shipping options with the line items of the order so that our order routing engine can use that to drive how it's creating shipping requests. And in turn, how the fulfillment location is then shipping those items out. With that, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. So that is the first advanced routing feature that we're showcasing, which is shipping options. And of course, if there's any specific questions about these at the end, definitely feel free to drop them, and we drop them in the chat and we can discuss those. But moving on to our second advanced routing feature, I'm actually going to cover location groups. So let me switch my screen here. Location groups for us, and let me switch this over to the singular location. So if I navigate over to the left-hand nav and I select locations. By default, you're going to go into the single location screen where you can see all my individual locations associated with my account. So generally speaking, that's how we have powered our order routing rules. You have to add individual locations, and within the rule, since there's a hierarchy, the first location that accommodates that gets set. You would need to add a lot of additional individual rules within an order routing rule. Make sure they're sorted to the proper priority so that when the routing engine goes through, it's selecting the proper location to route it to. And that could be very tedious if you have a lot of locations and you have a lot of different rules. So the idea here with the location groups is we're giving you the ability to sort of group these individual locations together in a dynamic manner. So once you've assigned a location group to an order routing rule, for instance, which I will show you here shortly, any adjustments to that group are going to automatically reflect within the order routing rule. You won't need to manually go and adjust it. So they're very flexible, very dynamic. If you have a lot of variability in your fulfillment network, or if you have a lot of locations, this will be a great way to manage them versus the one by one. So if you have more than 5 locations, this is definitely a great option. I'm going to switch over to the location tab. And in this instance, I don't have that many locations, so we're going to have to use our imagination a bit. So we have 3 individual locations associated with this group. This group is called Eastern locations. The idea here being these are all locations that sort of service the eastern part of the United States for any orders that come in from that area. So we have filters set, and it's going to look between these. Instead of having these individually within the rule, and I will show you that here shortly, we actually have these locations formatted into a group. And you can see here when you actually, you can search for the here, but in this case, there's 3, so I'm not going to really try to search. You can also edit the group. But let's actually take a look and see how this group is assigned to an order routing rule. And then I'll circle back and we can actually create a location group from scratch. So if I go here and click this link, we'll pull up the order routing rule associated with the location group, which in this case, this is my Eastern US group. So you can see instead of having individual locations assigned here, what I have is I have one group. So I don't need to go in and manually structure this. And if I click the drop down here, you still have a visualization of what individual locations are made up in this group. So if you need to reference it on the fly, you don't need to jump back and forth between the 2 pages. Everything you need to understand what this rule is doing is still within the same ORE or order routing engine rule, just for ease of use. So this is what this looks like. And let's actually cancel this out, or let's actually close this and take a look at the Western US order routing rule. Obviously, this is a fairly simplistic setup, but somebody that has a lot of rules and a lot of locations, you're going to see a lot of rules, and it's much more useful in that instance. But this is going to give you a sort of look into how individual locations are set on the order routing rule, in which case you have the ability to adjust these to showcase priority. But if I wanted to add more locations, especially the single location, I would have to select it from here. Let's say this is the one, and then I would have to select more. And we'll go ahead and add another one. Instead of going that route, I can actually just go ahead and show what it looks like to create a new location group. So let's go back to locations. We'll pull this up, go into location groups, and let's show what it would look like to create a new location group. So going here, now we have a brand new group. So let's set the name of the group. So in this case, we'll go Western US, since this represents my Western zip codes and anything that needs to be shipped out to those Western states. I have specific locations that fulfill there. All I need to do here is add location. So if I click that button, we'll have a dialog pop up. And from here, you can search and you can see if you have a lot of locations, you'll be able to page through. In this instance, I'm going to add San Francisco. And let's go ahead and add Portland, and then let's see. I believe we have Seattle, so we have Seattle here. I'm just going to click and add these 3 locations. And now you can see that I have 3 individual locations associated with this one location group. And then very simply at this point, if everything looks good for your initial setup, you'll go ahead and create the location button, location group for my order routing rule. And now you can see that we have a brand new location group. So let's go back to the order routing rule where we previously saw all of the individual locations. So instead of me going through and manually dragging these back and forth and me adding individual locations, I will actually remove these. And now all I really need to do instead of a single type, I'm going to actually drop this and change it to location group. And then we're going to see our UI changes slightly. So now I have the ability to look at any of my existing location groups, and then I'm going to assign those. So now we see that I already have the existing Eastern locations, but now I have the newly created Western US. So I'm going to select that, and you'll again see the 3 locations associated with that. And then the actual magic associated with these location groups is you no longer have to manually sort or drag the priority. We have a couple of different options here. So if you look here, we have the by highest inventory. So that's how I'm going to keep it, which basically means regardless of how these are showing here, when I'm routing, I actually want to pick the location that has the most available quantity to fulfill this order. But we also have something if you want to focus more on going through the closest or the fastest shipping method. So it's more centrally located to the customer that purchased the order. We actually have a secondary option you could use where it says basically closest shipping. So whatever location is closest to the customer's address, that's where it will be sent. So we have those 2 options. And from here, I would simply save it. What's nice about locations versus individual rules now, if I was to take on a new fulfillment location, I wouldn't need to adjust this rule. I could simply add it to my existing group, and then that's going to be reflected in my rule automatically. And at the same time, if I had a lot of new rules, new routing rules that I needed to create, I wouldn't have to take the time to individually create locations and then manually sort them. Instead of creating 10 individual groups or 10 individual locations, I could simply assign that group. And now my work is done and it's dynamic and set. And I have 2 options to decide what my priority is by highest inventory or closest routing location. Those are our 2 routing features for advanced routing features for today's webinar and office hours. I think now we can go into our Q&A phase and see if anybody has any additional questions. It should be noted that it doesn't have to be just related to our advanced routing features. It could be any product questions that you may have.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. That was awesome. And we had a bunch of questions and some answers in the chat. So I want to bring Anand Kathari on stage. Anand, do you want to cover some of the questions that were asked and answered in the chat here?
Yeah, I think they are consistently about, or they're all around the same pattern around where does this information that drives the shipping option like SIOC come from? Where should it? I think in your example you talked about it can come from product catalog. The question is, does this have to live in product catalog or it can be somewhere else? So let me first just set the stage for it and we can ask. I tried to answer. I'm not sure if everybody saw it, like it was visible in the chat. So first of all, those shipping options, the way we have designed it is they are on the order. So you're making the decision at the order level. How does that data come in the order? Can come from many places. It can come just from the order source. When we are pulling the order, if there is something on the order, a metadata, a field, a tag that helps you make that decision, then you can just use the order mapping on that, the inbound mapping on the source channel of from where we are pulling the order, and you can use that and set the shipping option appropriately at the line level. You can also pull it from a product catalog. The way you would do it is when you pull the product catalog from your source, like whether you're getting the product catalog from Shopify or NetSuite or anywhere else. By the way, you can only pull a product catalog from one place, meaning a particular SKU can only be pulled from one place, not from many places. So you can have products pulled from many places as long as the SKUs are unique, different from each source. So when you pull that product into Pipe, again, you can use the mapping on the inbound for the product in that channel and pick up whatever metadata is there in the source that represents these things like SIOC and other shipping options. You can map them over and save it on your product catalog. Once you save it there, then when an order comes into Pipe17, you can use automation engine, which a little bit what Daniel showed, to look up that product and fetch that information and set the shipping option. Now, because you're doing it in custom mapping, you have a lot of flexibility. It can be a field to field mapping. You can write a little logic, any kind of JavaScript to decide how do you set these flags, whether you're doing at the order level or the product level. So in short, that information come from many places. In fact, you can have, which we have some customers doing, that is that they set the shipping option by using our automation engine and writing the code and hard coding certain things in there. So for example, they say if the order pattern is this, or the SKU is this, or the SKU matches this regular expression, then it is SIOC. Then I'm going to set the flag to true, because they are patterns, and that patterns can be coded in the automation engine rules when an order comes in, because you can write a rule when an order is created or updated, and right there you can write your logic on how to set these options. So there are many options, not just one, on how you get that data onto the order to drive your shipping options, to indicate what the order routing engine should do when routing those line items. Hopefully that is clear. I will keep going through this, but I think they were all related to this. Oh, how do you manage order routing? That's the second question I see. How do you manage order routing fulfillment when example is product ABC ordered with 10 quantities, location A is having 3, location B is having 4, and location C is having 3. So this is sort of inbuilt into Pipe17's order routing. So if you for an individual line, if you want to split that line, it's a simple flag onto, when you write your order routing rules, there is a flag called allow splitting. When you do that, irrespective of what you have set shipping options, and I'll come to in a minute why, how do you see them as different, right? So if the decision made at a single line, and if you write an order routing rule and say splitting allowed, not only we will split the lines in different lines to different location where the inventory is available, but we also split an individual line to where the inventory is available, right? So in this case, if your rule had A, B, and C in the rule, and you said split allowed, and an order came with that one line with 10 quantity, and A had 3, B had 4, C had 3, we would automatically create 3 shipping requests: one for location 1, one for B, one for A, one for B, one for C, with the appropriate quantity. In fact, if you only had 7 out of 10 into location 3 and 4, and the third had 0 or nobody else, we would create and route 3 to A, 4 to B, and we will put the rest 3 in out of stock, so that we'll retry when OR keeps retrying, right? Your order, it will in the retry, we will keep looking for location that has the remaining 3, and whichever we find, we will create the SR for that one. So that's built into the functionality. What shipping options give you is to make decisions across many lines. So when you say single location and you put 3 lines into a single location, which means now you're saying, I want to make decision not based on just one line, but I want to make decisions based on 3 lines in this group, because I want all of those 3 to go to one location. Same way, when you do all or nothing, you are allowing the decision made on multiple lines. So that's the subtle difference. So this way you have flexibility of making decisions on a group level or on an individual line level. Hope that clarifies.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. I think one of the things that I could have framed better is this gives you so much more flexibility because you might be in a situation where you generally allow your orders to be split, as in the question along, if one location didn't have the ability to fulfill all of the quantity, but you might want to have certain items that you don't want to split, and you can actually enforce that on a granular level, which is gives you much more flexibility than if it was simply built into our rule, which is why it's sort of focusing on a per order basis.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think
There's one new question. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say there are a couple of new questions that came through. I think Craig's relates to as a follow up on this, which is, is there a way to split orders across locations using percentages?
That's a great question, Craig. If you don't mind, give a real life example of where these percentages, what is the business use case behind this percentage distribution? Having said that, you would have to essentially, in this case, you would have to I don't know. We have to think about. No, I don't think we allow you to say by percentages, because we look at inventory availability, and if an inventory is available and you have mentioned that location will be picked, and whatever is available is routed to that location. To limit saying only 50% to be routed to that location, that would be a customization which we can support, but it's not out of the box, meaning you can't just give percentages somewhere in a configuration and we do it. You would have to use automation engine to write certain sort of overrides to the routing rules and drive these percentage distribution on your own, and convert that into what we call a pre-routed order. So the routing decision is made outside of the routing engine by using automation engine. There you will write your splits, and then automation engine will just honor those. For example, if I begin, he now gave, thanks Craig, he gave an example business. If I begin deramping one 3PL and ramping up others, but inventory numbers are not yet flowing into Pipe17 at all locations. I see. Deramping. Yeah, okay. So but while deramping, you only want to send them a small. So by the way, when you say percentages, I'm assuming you're saying percentage at a line level. So if a line was 100 units were ordered, you want to send 50%. So 50 units to one location, 30 units to another, 20 units to other. That's what I assumed, and that's how I answered. I see your use case. This out of the box, we can think about functionality, but you can do it through customization by using automation engine and what we call pre-routed orders.
Awesome. Thanks, Anand. Here's a question. What's the recommendation for testing from setting a shipping option through to order routing? Want to make sure that everything works as expected before pushing to live orders.
So sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so the question, as I understand it, is you've essentially set up this automation rule to apply the shipping option, but you kind of want to do end-to-end testing to make sure that it's working properly, which I'm going to preemptively say that's a great idea. Always test your automation rules after you create them. Don't just create them and hope they work. So in this instance, within the automation rules themselves, we have some AI features built in where they can explain and review that. So you could go the AI route. If it was a code option, we have a test playground where you can actually load in order data from a specific order, and then you can actually use that to drive some testing, and you can validate your filters that way. So I highly recommend any automations that you create, go through and do some additional testing phase to that. If you wanted to be very thorough and actually see how that would route, you could even go to the option of potentially creating a test order and trying to flow that through order routing engine. That's a little bit more end-to-end and probably a little bit more tedious, but that's probably how I would start reviewing that. I don't know, do you
Yeah,
have any feedback?
Yeah, that's the individually automation in every individual component has testability and with the help of AI. So automation engine has the test drawer. You can test, but you're only testing automation engine rule.
Mhm.
ORE has test dry run, essentially its own test drawer that will testing the ORE rules, the order routing engine rules. So you can do unit testing. Obviously, if you want to put all of that together, and you want to do end-to-end testing, one way to do it is flow and order. You can create orders. You don't need to create orders in selling channel. You can create orders in Pipe17 UI test order, right? You create that order, let it flow through. On the shipping request, you can create a shipping request automation, add a tag on the order, say it's a test order, say it's my test. These tags will be copied over to the shipping request. When automation engine does its work, order routing engine does its work, so routes, shipping requests are created, tags will be copied over. Now in the shipping request automation, you can say if the tag equal to my test, pause, meaning you put the shipping request in review required, which means the shipping request gets created, it's put into review required. Now you can keep creating orders, and the system will create the shipping request according to all your rules and put them in review required. You can review them, say, okay, yeah, this did the job. I was expecting 2 shipping requests, I got them, or I was expecting 1 and I was expecting out of stock for the other. All of those things you will start seeing, so that these shipping requests don't flow to your 3PL, right? You block them in pipe, and then you can just cancel and delete. You can cancel and delete or archive your orders and the shipping request. That's typically how you would do end-to-end testing. Individual, every component has its own test drawer essentially, so you can do unit testing as well.
Perfect. Yeah, speaking of shipping requests, Jonathan had this question. Could you use this to create a separate type of order from the shipping request? For example, 10 units of item ABC are ordered, but 7 units are at warehouse 1 and 3 units are at warehouse 2. But you want to fulfill an order from warehouse 1. Could you create a transfer order for 3 units to get them to warehouse 2?
Get them to warehouse 2. We don't automatically create transfer orders today, because transfer orders are there is a lot of logistics around it. Usually you do transfer orders in bulk. You don't do 1 unit, 2 unit here and there, right? Because the cost of such transfers are just huge. But it's a fair point. I get that point, that if you want, and Craig, sorry, Jonathan, the follow-up question I might add is, how does it save you from shipping cost? Because you are going to block the order of 7 units, not fulfill it till the 3 units are shipped from a secondary location to the primary location, where you're incurring the shipping cost, and then you're waiting, and then you are shipping out. So you're already there is a cost associated to that shipping. So wouldn't it be better to send it from the second? Now, maybe not. If you have some optimized shipping, then it's a valid use case, but we don't automatically create transfer orders, because in what we have seen, almost always the transfer orders are bulk transfers in pallets and truckloads, not individual units. And therefore we don't, and that comes through a proper supply chain, like operations management, and forecasting and planning, rather than just an individual order flow, because it can get overwhelming, right, if we did this. So today we don't have it. It's fair point. If that, would love to hear more about it, so drop us more information, and if this is something that is absolutely needed, we can definitely consider.
Yeah, he added some clarity. They're very close to one another. So one is a store and one is a warehouse.
I see.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair point. One is a store.
Interesting.
Awesome. I wanted to do a final call of questions. We are at time. So thank you all for the wonderful session. If anybody has any final questions, I'm sure we can answer one more. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next session, next quarter in Q2. Details to come. Dan, Anand, any final closing notes or anything that you want to add? trying to give people some time to.
I'm still thinking about the first one. The use case correct. Sorry, was Jonathan said you can technically hack it. If if something like this happens, order routing engine splits the order and creates one for the warehouse and one for the store. You can write SR automation and look for the scenario and update the shipping address on that to your store, to your warehouse, I guess, wherever the second scenario if you want to. You can change the shipping request to go there, and then have them ship from there along with the original units. That's possible if you want to do it that way. Anyway, I was just still thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a very creative solution for that.
Well, that's perfect. You are teeing me up, because if you'd like to go deeper, whether that's configuring routing rules, reviewing your fulfillment logic, or whatever creative solutions we could provide, please reach out to your account manager or submit a support ticket directly in the Pipe17 app, and our experts, Dan and Anand and the team behind, are there standing by to help guide you along. And as always, if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover in future office hour sessions, please let your account manager or whoever your key Pipe17 contact is, please let them know, or email us at marketing@pipe17. Until next time, thank you for spending time with us today. Happy selling and smooth operations. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.